Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back, I should say, to Real Talks. So, this is the premiere episode of the Mission Impossible rewatch. So, I thought I'd stream it. And so, this actually, if you guys missed this, this is going to be June 2nd. This is going to be out for your viewing pleasure. So, what we're going to do, guys, is I know I've made mention of this in the past, but those people are not familiar with it. I am going to sit down and we are going to watch, or I'm going to watch every single Mission Impossible film. And so I sat down and would just watch the first one the other night. And so on week one, I'm going to today, okay, June 2nd, it will be released to you guys. So Mission Impossible 1996. The ninth is going to be Mission Impossible 2. That's the one directed by John Woo. The 16th is going to be Mission Impossible 3, directed by J.J. Abrams. By the way, was his directorial debut. And we're going to go on and on and on. And what's going to end up happening is that we are going to lead all the way up to Dead Reckoning. So by the time Dead Reckoning comes out, the week before, we'll have gone through all of the Mission Impossible movies and gone through and talked about Fallout. So that's what's I'm going to stream every single one, just like this one. So there is a ton of stuff to get to on this. So as I said to start, this is what we're doing. Mission Impossible. This is the one that kicked off the whole thing for Tom Cruise. He was huge back in '96 anyways. I mean, I could go through other movies. Top Gun, The Firm, A Few Good Men, whatever you want. This one here was the start of it. This has been his baby for the past 25 years. He's done nothing else, but he's been so good at it. So I want to talk about a couple of things, a little background on how it really started and everything else. And then I'm going to get into because this was based on a television series, I'm going to get into the television series. And then I'm going to talk about the movie and what I really liked about the movie and didn't really care for or whatnot. So Mission Impossible, I'm going to talk about how this whole thing came about first. So in 1993, his agent back then was named Paulo Wagner. He was with CAA, okay, the creative artist agencies, and they're still around today. So they actually developed this production company, and it was called Cruise and Wagner. I know, original, huh? So it was called Cruise and Wagner. And so what this did, it gave him access to all of the IP through the vault of Paramount. Okay. And then what ended up happening was, so they went through and they were trying to figure out, okay, which ones do we want to do? Now, if you remember back in the 90s too, okay, there were a lot of television remakes, a lot of them. Okay. You had the Addams Family, you had the Flintstones, you had Beverly Hillbillies, so you had a lot of remakes back then. So this was kind of going in that same line. So originally, okay, once this whole thing was mapped out, okay, Sidney Pollack, who's actually the director of The Firm, who we worked with Tom Cruise, was originally supposed to be the director. And he had to bow out. So they actually were trying to figure out who else he could get. So what he did was he had a meeting, or somehow or another had a meeting, and Brian De Palma was there. Of course, Brian De Palma is an amazing director, and he actually talked about, he's done, I think his master class for me is The Untouchables, the 1987, Robert De Niro, Kevin Costner, Andy Garcia, Sean Connery gangster film, which, by the way, guys, we'll be doing that for the next month. So Patreon channel, and let me just put the banner up for you guys. So this is where you can help me out on Patreon if you want to go there. And so what will end up happening is that there is two levels there. One is $5, and if you do the $5 a month, okay, you're going to get what's known as Mob Mondays. Mob Mondays is going to be, I'm going to be doing a monthly film there. The first one we did was The Departed. This one is going to be The Untouchables this month. You guys voted on Twitter for that. And then The second level is only $10 a month. I made it very reasonably charged, very reasonably priced. And if you do the $10 level, okay, you're going to get both. Not only Mob Mondays, but Rewatch Wednesdays. And Rewatch Wednesdays is a show in which I never got off the ground, but wanted to do. And essentially, it was movies that I had seen that I hadn't seen in a long time. So the very first one I did was Steve Jobs. That was with Michael Fassbender, Kate Winslet, and others. Amazing movie written by Aaron Sorkin, so directed by Danny Boyle. So that's where you can go to see that. But don't worry, guys. The whole Mission Impossible thing is going to be for free. But yeah, so that's what's going to be there. So, anyways, getting back to that. So yeah, De Palma was attached. Okay, and like I said, I think this is honestly for me, this is his third best film. The Untouchables is his masterclass without a question. Okay, and then you have, I think, Scarface, and then of course, Mission Impossible. So he was attached. De Palma actually comes on. So when it got released in 1996, this is fascinating because I didn't even know this. So in 1996, this got released to a record at the time, 3,000 theaters. Okay. And it made $75 million in its first 2 days. It made 41, I think, and then 36. And it was just astounding. It actually had an $80 million budget. And there's something I'll get to here in a minute that's even more fascinating about insurance. And this is where the insurance comes in for our big stars. So, of course, De Palma. So one of the things De Palma did really to start out, okay, was to build tension. So everybody knows of the scene, okay, we'll get to it a little bit later too, of the vault, okay? He deliberately wanted to build tension up. It's a quiet little thing, but they're long takes. And everything that he did, okay, was made to build tension. Like the little rat crawling down the thing, okay? There was no noise at all. And he wanted to make it so it was very interesting and was suspenseful. And actually, one thing Tom Cruise ended up doing, okay, he ended up putting coins in his shoes. So when he's doing all those acrobatics, that's actually him doing it. But he actually put coins in his shoes to kind of weigh him down because he was moving too much. So there are the three main tropes in any major heist film. Okay, and that's what this is. At the end of the day, it's a heist film. Okay, is one is getting the team together. So he gets the team together. Okay, so this is that amazing scene in which you have Vin Rames and you have the other actor there, Jean Reno. Okay, and from The Professional, and Vin Rames, Pulp Fiction, and several other films. This is before Pulp Fiction, though, and so yeah, and this is where he's basically telling him, so getting the crew together. They're disavowed, of course, and I'm not going to go through every single beat of it, but you get the idea. And it's one of those things where, yeah, it's just an amazing thing. So the second thing you really do, okay, is tell him about the heist. So this is where he leans for I loved how you actually was introduced, right? So the camera's slowly moving around. Where one of the things I loved watching the film again is you see the juxtaposition of the closeness to the distance of the actors when they're introduced. So you have one that's really right there, and then you have the other one and that was a really good way to do it. And then the camera slowly pans over to her face, and then she does. You don't even see. Normally, you would see, she looks over, and then it would be a cut, right? They move over. They don't actually just cut to the next shot. So they move over. They move the camera over. Fantastic done. And then he leans forward. So it's just remarkable to see how that's done. Um, so that was something that I really enjoyed. So, and then of course the third is the tech. The tech is something that for every single scene that they're going to pull off a heist, they have to have the tech. Whether it's the glasses, which come into play later on in the film, whether it's the little gizmo that are undoing the screws to vent, whether it's little mirrors, the device to lock up the lasers, everything. Little tech to help you along, further along, to help. Because look, the harness itself is not hard, but and they even talk about the tech when they're in the planning room. They're planning it out, and they're like, well, Krieger can get it. It's 24 hours. And the laptops with the thinking machines, the AI chip. I mean, it's amazing how far we've come now, but it's like to see that, um, incredible. So, and the other thing there, the last thing I'll touch on real quick is this: Tom Cruise deferred his payment. At the time, he was making $20 million a film, and he deferred his payment, his normal $20 million, in order to actually be in the film and do his own stunts because insurance at the time was, I mean, if you look at the films he had really done, yes, he had done Top Gun. Yes, he was just coming off Jerry Maguire, but there wasn't a lot there that was making him go, oh my God, these are going to be death defying stunts. So he said, you know what, I'll pass on the thing and that will give us more production, the budget, which by the way, the budget for this movie was $80 million. Okay. And it ended up making $45 million opening weekend, which doesn't sound like a lot today, but it's huge back then, 20 some odd years ago. And it ended up grossing $180 million domestic and went on to gross $457 million worldwide. Um, just amazing, amazing. So that was a little bit about the film. Now, of course, we all know, for those that know, okay, I had to do my research, but this wasn't just some IP that just came out of the blue. Okay, this was actually a television show. Okay, that starred Peter Graves as Jim Phelps, and so the show ran on CBS from 1966 to 1973. And it premiered September 17th, 1966. It had 171 total episodes, 7 total seasons. And believe it or not, it won 10 Emmys. It won 10 Emmys. It was nominated for 8 in 1 year. And in 1968, Barbara Bain ended up winning an Emmy for Best Lead Actress. And then there was a Best Film or Best, Editing Act or Emmy that was won. So it's fascinating because this was a big show back in the 60s and the 70s. This had stars on it like Martin Landau, who was huge at the time, Leonard Nimoy. Okay, so here is this, yes, that is for all those out there, that is Spock. Okay, that's Barbara Bain in the middle. Okay, and that's Peter Graves over there on the right. So what ended up happening was you had Leonard Nimoy on there, Stephen Hill. Now, Stephen Hill is not necessarily a recognizable name, but go back to Law and Order for a minute. He actually is a Guinness Book of World Records. He was starred in the most consecutive episodes as the DA. So it ran for almost 20 years, and he was in that every single. So he did that, and Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott, of course, anybody who's seen the most recent A Star Is Born, I love that movie. He plays Bradley Cooper's brother. Okay, actually, he got nominated for an Oscar for that. But yeah. So Martin Landau was in 76 of them. Okay, Leonard Nimoy, as you can see on the far left, was in 49 of them. Stephen Hill was in 28 of them, and Sam Elliott was in 13 of them. Peter Graves, okay, who actually was the lead, as I said, 171. He was in every single episode. And that, of course, was played by John Voight. And so this is the original cast. Okay, so let me get my photo down there real quick. So that's Peter Graves over there. Okay, and so he played John Voight. Then you had, you know, I believe that either that one or the other one was Barbara Bain. I'm not familiar with what she looks like, so forgive me. But I know it's one of the two women. And then you had, everybody else. So that was fascinating. Um, so of course they actually had to create somebody, and that ended up being, as I demonstrated earlier, Ethan Hunt was actually created for the show, for the movie rather, because he was not in the show. And what they did was every single time that they were picking their team, so you had somebody there and he would just toss the photographs. Okay, now if you go back to the movie, okay, what they did was they had a list of names on the disavowed list, and that's how they selected um, Krieger and the other characters. So it was always fascinating for that. But yeah, so I'm gonna play a couple clips here real quick. One a little bit later on, but this one here it's interesting because we always talk about the big thing about the big rap that Mission Impossible gets is the stunts and how they're done, right? And of course, I mean, so anybody who's just watching the show earlier today knows that we have CinemaCon going on in Las Vegas right now, and Paramount is going to be doing their presentation on Thursday or Friday. And every single year that they've had a Mission Impossible film, they've come out and they've shown exactly what they did. Now, of course, anybody who's familiar with Skydance, and they Paramount's actually put it on YouTube this year, so they're probably not going to be doing that. But there was a whole 9-minute sequence about the motorcycle jump at the end of the last trailer. Okay, um, and I should say the only trailer, but one of the last sequences you see is Tom Cruise just going off the cliff. Now, they actually did a whole 9-minute behind the scenes and how they did it. But getting back to the stunts are the biggest thing, right? And I want to play, like I said, I'm going to play a clip here in a minute. And this was one of the smaller things. And they actually did do this, Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise. And I want you to really just, if nothing else, appreciate what they did back then.
I can understand you're very upset.
Kittredge, you've never seen me very upset.
I want to make sure that you do it in hell.
So they actually blew that tank up, as you can see. And it's just fascinating to see that 25 years later and go, oh my God, because that seems so mundane to what we expect and what we are, accustomed to now, whether it's him hanging off a plane, whether it's him, hanging off the tallest building in the world, whether it's him hanging off a cliff, which we'll see in Mission Impossible 2. But it's one of those things where he does his own stunts. And the one thing about Tom Cruise I love is authenticity. And, I've always said this. He is the last movie star we have, and once he's gone, guys. I mean, he broke his ankle in Fallout, actually. So the scene, when we get to Fallout, I'll show the clip. But, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, where he's jumping. He's going to jump out the window, and he jumps from one building to the other, and he didn't make it one time. And you can actually see the clip on YouTube, and his ankle actually smashes the concrete, and he finished the take. And of course, he broke his ankle. He was out of commission for 6 weeks, and so they filmed the other stuff until he was able to get back and going. But he's 60 some odd years old. He's able to do that, and he stays in tip-top peak shape, whether it's flying a jet in Top Gun Maverick or it's running, jumping long. He's almost Superman to a certain extent. Anyways, I digress. But yeah, so that is the whole backstory of Mission Impossible. So what I want to get to now is actually the film itself, because I think it's incredibly vital to the whole thing. So I love the first person when, the whole thing when we go into the party, okay? And by the way, these are all going to be nuggets throughout the film. So when we go into the party, one of the things you see is, one of the women has on a pair of shades or sunglasses, and I love that we're able to see that what she sees is what we're able to see. Going back to the tech, going back to the gear, this is how they're able to do that. Um, and even before that, okay, Tom Cruise and Emilio Estevez, okay, who had a very small part, about 5 minutes in it, but he hands him the gum. And of course, the gum is what you see exploding the fish tank there and comes into play later on. Um, yeah, but it's just one of those things where it's back and forth of how, you know, I mean, the humor is there too. Like, the whole needling of Jack, and saying, well, you just lost out on the date with so and so because he wasn't doing his job. One thing about this movie is, while it's a spy movie and while it's a heist movie, at the end of the day, it's funny. There are some very funny humorous parts to it. So how they by the way, so how they shot, because you only get one take when you do that scene I just showed you with the fish tank. You get one take. That's not CGI, boys and girls. I love how De Palma was able to slow it down, and we see the gun hit the fish tank, and then it just slows down, and then he's able to jump out and then run away from Kittredge. But it's how they shot that was so impressive, because he could have shot it any way he wanted, but to put the cameras where he did and then to slow it down really helped. Um, the upward when they're talking, you see the upward camera angles. Now, anybody's familiar with film and everything else, upward camera angles, downward camera angles are very important. I love how they were showing Tom Cruise and Kittredge, and they were having like that verbal joust. Um, it's who is stronger type of thing. Um, but in the spiral staircase, so the scene where he gets back to the safe house, okay, and he goes in, and you just see this spiral staircase, and you just look down from several floors up. It's incredible. It really is incredible. Um, it's mesmerizing for that quick split second. It's funny because when we get back to the safe house, the internet. I mean, I'm on the internet right now talking to you guys, and I'm streaming, and I've got Wi-Fi. But this was called the quote World Wide Web, right? So when we see, Ethan trying to do his thing, it says web search. I mean, these are the days of AOL. AOL, CompuServe, they were just starting to get. AOL was huge back in 1996. Now, obviously, they didn't use AOL, but I mean, you had, if you want to tailor off real quick and say, well, you had, you've got mail and everything else. But yeah, so I thought the fact that you were able to appreciate um, the internet, it was great. Um, Let me talk about another piece of the puzzle here that I thought was very interesting. Vanessa Redgrave, she was magnificent. Now, she only has a small role playing Max, but my God, was she good. Just the flirting, the quibs back and forth between, Tom Cruise or Ethan and her. It was remarkable. I could have watched the whole movie. I wish there was more of her in there because she was so, so good. And I get it, right? I mean, she's the proxy and everything else. I mean, Kittredge is really the bad guy. Um, I loved her in this movie, though. She was so, so good. Um, you know, I mean, she carries herself so well and everything else. I thought she was perfect for this role. I mean, the whole, the scene in the car, and he says, Max, and she's like, I don't have to tell you what kind of comfort that brings. It's like a warm blanket. Of course, her name is Maxine in the film. Um, just remarkable what she did. So getting back to actually the team. So I want to talk about that. So once again, fantastic entrance with this shot. I go back to this shot for a number of different reasons. So this is the entrance and how they were able to touch on the front to back, whether you're talking about Krieger, okay, or Luther. And, you know, it's just one of those things that De Palma did in the cinematographer, okay. Um, Stephen Burnham, okay, did so well. And it was fantastic in how they did that. And then on top of that, to actually have the camera move around the room, as I said earlier, excuse me, and touch upon every single individual. Okay, because you could have gone to a wide shot after that, right? But no, what they did was they touched on Luther, they touched on Krieger, okay, and then they came around to her. She looks over, she doesn't say a word, and then you see Cruz just lean in. Just remarkable filmmaking in that respect. I loved it so much. Um, I mean, so the tension. I'm going to go back to the vault scene. I'll show this clip here in a minute because this is so. As I said, De Palma, what he wanted to do is he wanted to build tension. And how do you build tension? Okay, long periods of silence. So even in this scene where he's describing, the voice authorization and the key card and everything else, and it's like, Luther says, "You really think we can do this?" I mean, even Krieger says, "So why don't I fly a helicopter right into Fort Knox? We can land in there. We can, basically steal the gold." You know, and Krieger says, "Even with the top of the line crypto, I have to be there." And he's like, "Oh, it's much worse than you think." And he's explaining the pressured floor, and the key card, and that goes back to where it's setting up the heist. And once again, how do you do it? Silence, a whisper, body temperature. You can't raise your voice. You can't do anything. So when we're thinking, oh my God, there are so many different obstacles we have to avoid here that it's unbelievable to um to really look at. And it's definitely tough. And I want to show this to you because it's just so pulsating and it's suspenseful. And I mean, you take a look at any of De Palma's other films, whether it's The Untouchable, there's a lot, gunfire and there's gunfights, or Scarface. It's still one of those things. I mean, he did several other films. Those are the two I'm really, touching on. But it's amazing. But I just want to show you a little snippet of the heist because it's one of those things where when you see it, you could get a greater appreciation. You understand, oh, this is what they're doing. And so yeah, here is that clip of the heist. It's just tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous how he was able to just build tension up and just make you go, "Oh my God, is he going to touch the floor?" And then actually, and by the way, can we even talk about Tom Cruise's core strength there? Man, built like a house. I mean, you know, I mean, not being able to hit the floor in any capacity, unbelievable. And then, of course, you had the gag there was they did everything right, and then Hunt hands Krieger the disc, and then what does he do? He drops the knife, and I love it as it's falling down. It's another slow motion shot. Is it going to get on the table? How is it going to do that? And then, you know, as he opens the door, um, William Dunlow opens the door. Of course, it hits the table. By the way, like the sweat, yeah. So it's interesting because the actor who is playing William Dunlow, Rolf Saxon, they have announced that it's not going to be in this one, but the next one, in Dead Reckoning Part 2, which will be the absolute final film in 2024. He is going to be coming back, which is awesome to see. Um, and I think the circle, closing the circuit like that, is unbelievable. And it ends exactly the same way that it started, right? And it, where Jim was, of course, John Voight's character, and you know, that's the last thing we see. And I just this movie is so good in so many different ways because it really, when you look at how much money this movie in this franchise has made over the years, it's absolutely remarkable. I mean, you have other franchises and Fast and Furious, tons and tons and tons of money. Um, but you take a look at a franchise like Mission Impossible, for example. Okay, and it's one of those things where, so as it stands right now, okay, this has made over one, two, three, four, five. So the six films right now. It's made $3.5 billion. Now, So this one here made $457 million. Okay, and it's gone up. I mean, Mission Impossible 3 didn't do as well, but I loved it, and we'll cover that in a couple weeks. But it's like Fallout made almost $800 million, and the budgets have it's fascinating because, as I said at the top of the show here, this just this was only made on an $80 million budget. Um, but I think one of the things that really makes this franchise what it is the stunts. Because look, you're not going there to see the action. I mean, you're not going the acting rather. You're not going there to see the acting. Okay, whether it's Simon Pegg or Vin Rames or Tom, you're not going. That's out the window. You're going there to see the stunts. And one of the biggest things is how big are these stunts going to be? And it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, they've gotten bigger and bolder and more grandiose and everything else. And as we get deeper and deeper in this franchise, in the movies and everything else, I'll talk about the stunts. And that's one thing I wanted to touch on was the stunts, because these stunts are what make these movies. You don't remember, Fallout from, the acting. You remember that, when Tom Cruise is hanging on that rope, you know, and it's X amount of thousands of feet down there, or he's hanging on the tallest building in the world. And he has to climb. They actually had to alter that building in order to do that, or whatever it is. Mission Impossible 2, where he's hanging on a cliff. It's crazy, but yeah, I mean, Mission Impossible, and I've always wondered this. I mean, we always talk about movie stars, and I said he's the last movie star, and I firmly believe that. But beyond that, what if this hadn't done well, right? Let's say this didn't make $437 million, okay, I'm sorry, $457 million, okay. What if this hadn't made that much money, okay? what would have happened to Tom Cruise? Now, I'm not saying he would have fallen off the map. I mean, it was Tom Cruise. He could have, I'll just chalk it up to a loss and move on. But I think it'd have been fascinating because we probably wouldn't have had Mission Impossible 2. And the reason why they got John Woo to do it is, don't forget, just a couple years earlier, he comes off doing Face Off, right? So, I mean, John Travolta and Christian Slater. So, it's fascinating. But yeah, I love this movie. And when you go back and you rewatch these again, and you really appreciate what this is. I mean, like Mission Impossible 2, and that's the next one we're gonna do in the set. Okay, that came out 2000, 23 years ago. That's astounding. That's astounding. That's amazing to even consider, because those movies couldn't have been made today. You know, and that's why he's able to do it. What I would say is this: anybody who hasn't seen this, go check out, and you can find it on YouTube. Go check out and watch the 9-minute behind the scenes of how they did this stunt for Dead Reckoning, because it's incredible. It really is. And you go, my God, this guy's really going to do this. And they did it in the first take. I mean, you want to talk about professionalism? He did it on the first take. He's like, yeah, can we get another couple? Just, I mean, he's an adrenaline junkie. What do you want? But one thing about Tom Cruise is this: he does everything right. He does everything right. He doesn't do anything half-assed, because he knows. I mean, even going back when I was, watching back in 2000, it's like, I want to do this for them. I want to do this for the audience. I'm not, incredible. I love this, and like I said, it would have been interesting to find out what would have happened if this hadn't done well. So, but Paramount's got a hit on their hands, and they've had a hit on their hands for the last 25 years. So, and I think the last thing I'll say is this: when you work with guys like a Brian De Palma and a John Woo and a Chris McQuarrie and a J.J. Abrams, and by the way, like I said, Mission Impossible 3, he was known for Lost and Alias and everything else, but that was his directorial debut. You just do it right. You do it absolutely. I mean, Fallout, Ghost Protocol, all these things. It's unbelievable. Okay, yeah. So that is Mission Impossible. That is arguably, so this is the one that started the whole thing, and I loved it. I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna enjoy all the other ones. It's just amazing this was done in 1996, 27 years ago. Boy, and people that win are the fans. We're all treated to just fantastic stuff. There is nothing that they cannot do. I truly, truly believe that. So, and look, I'm sure there's some CGIs used in Dead Reckoning, but let's face it, anything they're going to do practical, they're going to do practical. I mean, this last one has a budget, I believe, of $290 million. If I'm not, this is in post-production right now. Yeah, I believe it's $290 million. Yeah, $290 million. That's incredible. And this is going to make so much money. I really thought, to be absolutely honest, and last thing I'll end on is this: I really thought Dead Reckoning had a chance to be a $200 million open box office. I don't know about that anymore. It's going to make about 150 though, and it's going to crush Oppenheimer, and it's going to crush Barbie. So, and that's why I said this in the show today, I really think one of them do need to move. August is not that big. I mean, yes, Blue Beetle's coming out, but they need to move. One of them needs to move, because if they don't, they're just going to get swallowed up. So, okay, guys, So that's it for Mission Impossible. Um, so as I said, I'm streaming this. If you didn't catch it today, okay, um, June 2nd, this will be out for everybody, and then you can watch it then. Um, and then, in the coming days and weeks, I will be sitting down. My next one is going to be Mission Impossible 2, directed by John Woo. And, there's a whole other storyline and everything else, and it's going to be good. So we're all going to, I can't wait for Dead Reckoning. And this is what it's all going to lead up to, guys. We're going to do all these movies and a Mission Impossible rewatch to lead up to Dead Reckoning on July 19th. Okay, guys. So do the 3 things you need to do. Be safe, be careful, and have a great rest of the day. I'm David Steele. You've been watching the Mission Impossible rewatch, and this has been Real Talks. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.